My name is James Spearman. I'm an airframe and powerplant mechanic. I hold my Inspectors Authorization, and I'm a certified flight instructor. I also happen to fly for the Air Force National Guard in Knoxville, and recently I was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross. In this channel, all I try to do is add some value to the community and want to be a well-rounded resource for airplane owners. Today, what I wanted to talk about was Boroscope pictures. During an annual inspection, the whole airplane gets taken apart. We are going to go through a checklist of 170 to 200 something inspection steps. Imagine going out to your car and taking it all the way apart and going through like a 250 item checklist. You should find some things wrong with it. Part of the annual inspection, we're going to check the engine. You want to know what the life of the engine is, how the engine is doing. We do that really by 3 different methods, and nowadays you can have a really good idea on the health and overall longevity of the engine with number 1, old and tried true compression check. You're making sure that the engine can maintain pressure, hold compression during the combustion stroke, and maintain that power. Number 2 is oil samples. Every oil change and during the annual, we're sending off a little bit of oil from the sump, and it's getting sent off and getting tested on a molecular level. I happen to use Blackstone. They don't give me anything to talk about them, but they really are the best. It's really neat, and the unique engine that the airplane motor is. I do know some customers that use trucking companies to do oil sample analysis, and I really don't think that's a good idea because they can pull what's in the oil, but the engine on an airplane is just extremely unique, and it's using leaded fuel. So the neat thing about like a company like Blackstone, they can take the oil sample and they'll send me back that, hey, it looks like there is a intake leak. So why don't you test for intake leaks? And I'm like, well, holy cow, that's awesome. They were right. They can tell you if the cylinders are starting to break down or if the camshaft is starting to break down. It is a really useful tool, and along with that, you build up a trend with the oil samples so you can get an idea of how the engine's trending over time. What we're going to do is use Boroscope inspections. Boroscope inspection, while we have the spark plugs out, we're going to use a little camera that we can stick down into the cylinder, and I take 8 shots while I'm in there. And you can see on the inside of the cylinder what's going on. And particularly, you want to look at the intake, the exhaust valve, cylinder walls, top of the piston, all these types of things. The most common area that has problems is your exhaust valve. And the AOPA has put out a really nice guide that I use as a training aid with my customers. Anytime they come in and I sit down and go through the discrepancy list with an annual. And here it is. I'll throw it up on the screen here. And hopefully you can see this. Feel free to screenshot it and then zoom in. But I break this out every time a customer comes in, just because normally they haven't seen this before. But the exhaust valve, these engines are running leaded fuel, which adds an issue that is uncommon to other types of engines that are still in use today. And so couple that with a very weak ignition system, and you have a lot of lead deposits that are left inside the cylinder along with carbon deposits. So if you have low compressions, it's either due to your exhaust valve or the actual rings and not being able to maintain compression past the piston rings. More times than not, it's the exhaust valve. And here's why. The exhaust valve is made to rotate, and it distributes heat evenly around the exhaust valve. And so you can see at the bottom, they should look like burnt pizzas, a nice or a bullseye. And whether they're orange or red, hopefully they're not like the bottom middle one where it's just lead colored. You can see how much lead just builds up and stays there. It's really awful. This is somebody that doesn't lean while they're taxiing at all, and then doesn't lean in the pattern, stuff like that. The lead will just build up, and it doesn't get hot enough to melt it back off, turn back into a liquid, and burn it off. So it just stays as a solid caked up on top of the cylinder and on the exhaust valve. Also, the seat of the exhaust valve. And what happens is once you build up enough lead underneath the seat, the exhaust valve cannot close enough to maintain compression. So with this chart that we're looking at, that, you can see on the top, starting on the top left, the lead will build up and stop the valve from rotating. And when it can't distribute the heat evenly, not only can it not make compression typically, but then the heat starts to get concentrated. And you can see it starts looking like a crescent moon, and you start to see not a bullseye anymore. It starts to look like a crescent moon, and on one of the edges, it starts to get dark. Eventually, it will continue to get worse and turn green. On this diagram, they have green means stop because I guess green, after it gets to green, you're typically going to develop cracks, and it could fail. And if it does fail, you're going to have a power loss, no doubt, because you're going to lose one of your cylinders. So each cylinder, you want to go through and look at the exhaust valve on every cylinder. You want to make sure that the valve is continuing to rotate, and assuming that the engine has good compression still. And a neat trick that I actually use while I'm doing an engine inspection is when you do the compression check, if it doesn't make compression, you can actually hear it to see what's going on. So if you hear it coming out of the exhaust pipe, and that's where I'm like pumping air into it, and it's only getting, let's say, like 20 or 30 over 80, which is really bad. You really want to see them up in this high 60s, 70s. Normally you'll hear the hiss, like a hissing noise going out the exhaust pipe. When you hear it coming out of the exhaust pipe, you know it's just blowing straight past the exhaust valve. The exhaust valve is not seated, it's allowing air to go through there. If the exhaust is quiet, you can actually open the dipstick and you can put your ear down and listen and you can hear it coming past the dipstick. That's because it is going past the rings on the cylinder there. Today I talked about annual inspections, specifically on the engine, boroscopes, and the AOPA's guide to anatomy of a cylinder. I hope you gained some value out of this, and I'm happy to talk more about it. Feel free to reach out. And with that, we own a shop in East Tennessee, and we have our mechanics here have over 100 years of experience. If you call the main line, just ask for James. Obviously, we offer maintenance, but other things that we do for the community, the Cirrus community is definitely picking up on it, is electroware, electronic ignition. You're going to have way less of these problems for sure, ceramic coatings, and just want to be a well-rounded resource for aircraft owners in the community. Please like this video and subscribe to my channel, and I'd really appreciate it. I wish you the best and happy flying.